Three more rapes committed by United Nations peacekeepers in the Central African Republic. Two women and apparently a young girl, the rapes reported by the families. It feels as though this ghastly nightmare will never end. And indeed, it makes one angry, as I'm sure it makes you angry. But I'm going to try to contain my normal splenetic fury and look at this in a more sober and contemplative way. First of all, it's clear that the United Nations is making a terrible error in judgment as it attempts to respond to this problem. While it is true that something must be done in the country where the rapes occur, an even greater consideration must be the headquarters in New York, because it's clear that the people who are overseeing the peacekeeping operations generally in New York are inadequate to the task, and that explains much of the difficulty we're now confronting. It's obvious that the training over which they have purview is not working, hence the behavior of these peacekeeping troops. It's clear that the reporting mechanisms are awful. They discourage women from reporting rape because there's such a mishmash and hodgepodge of confusing routes and channels. It's clear that the investigative procedures are inadequate, sometimes expert, sometimes incompetent. Many agencies and groups undertaking them makes no sense. It's clear that the judicial processes don't work. It's clear that the entire culture of sexual exploitation and abuse given to the peacekeeping operations generally, suffusing them generally, is something that compromises the integrity of the United Nations. And when the senior leadership of the United Nations are asked about these problems, they engage in what can only be described as dishonesty. This has haunted the UN forever. Back in 2003, Kofi Annan, the then Secretary General, said that he would put in place the principle of zero tolerance for sexual exploitation and abuse. And that phrase has been repeated ad nauseum year after year, rhetorically, until today, and the crisis continues. And it continues because the Secretary General of the United Nations and the member states which give him instruction will not deal with the incompetence of the leadership at the headquarters in New York. Heads should roll amongst the heads of the peacekeeping operations in New York. It's really bewildering. Why does the Secretary General, why do the member states allow the reputation of the United Nations to be compromised? Why do they allow the reputation of peacekeeping, which has made such a contribution to the world over the decades, be sabotaged? Because they will not deal with the problems at the center. You know, when Ban Ki-moon was forced to go to the Security Council last week, he used the word cancer to describe the sexual exploitation and abuse. It was a word we used in quoting him in our own statement, released just a few days ago on these very issues. And you know, when you have a cancer, the professional practitioners apply surgery when necessary. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.